Hello and welcome. Today we would discuss the poem Composed Upon Westminster Bridge by Wordsworth. Now, as you would all know, Wordsworth is a romantic poet, and we mostly associate the poetry of Wordsworth with the Romantic era, which is associated with the appreciation for the beauty of nature. So, like much of his poetry, we also see a description of a certain landscape. But at the same time, this particular poem is very different from the poems which have been mostly composed by Wordsworth. And the reason behind that is that, unlike much of Wordsworth's other poetry, which mostly valorizes the beauty of the country or the village or the beauty of the natural um, bounty of nature, which is very, very different from the kind of landscape that you find in towns. But this particular poem uh, valorizes the beauty of the town. So it's written, upon Westminster Bridge, and it's written for a town. But at the same time, the poet is actually appreciating the beauty of the town, beauty of the city, beauty of the various man-made miracles, the towers, everything that you would see, which is not necessarily a part of natural beauty of any landscape. And many poets around the time of Wordsworth, and even before the time of Wordsworth, were actually known to mourn the loss of the village and the serenity of the village. And in this, a very popular example and a very famous poet was Thomas Gray, and his poem Elegy, written in the country churchyard, was actually the biggest example and the most popular example when you talk about the grief that the poets would talk about, the sadness that they would share with respect to the loss of village and the loss of the village life. So on the first impression, this poem is quite different from the usual style of Wordsworth, where he is talking about the beauty of the city and the serenity, the calm of the city in the early hours of the morning. And he says that this beauty is the beauty of silence. He says that the city is silent, the city is bare, and he says that never felt a calm so deep. And most importantly, he mentioned that this is the early morning time in the city, and this is just before when the people in the city have actually started working. They haven't really gone into the everyday task that they would be doing. So in a way, it's very easy to resonate. It's easy to feel the same feeling that Wordsworth is actually talking about, the feelings that he's putting forward in this poem, because in the morning the city does look quite fresh, quite calm, especially when you know that the silence is not going to last for a very long time. And once the people start with their daily chores, when they start with their daily lives, it is again going to be noisy, it's again going to be dirty, it's again going to be smoky and polluted. Now, the poem is written in iambic pentameter, and iambic pentameter, if you know, is one of the most common forms of metrical forms which the English poetry uses. It's also used very widely by Shakespeare. And this is a sonnet, which means that it is the traditional Italian verse form, which has 14 lines. But a sonnet actually has a structure. A sonnet is supposed to have a rhyming structure also. But Wordsworth doesn't follow any strict rhyme scheme, which is traditionally followed in a sonnet. And moreover, sonnet is supposed to be divided into an octave and a sestet. So basically, when you look at a sonnet, the first 8 lines are supposed to be different from the next 6 lines, in the sense that the first 8 lines are supposed to introduce you to a dilemma, and the next 6 lines are supposed to resolve that dilemma, resolve that question. But Wordsworth does not follow that either. So he is clearly following a certain part of the tradition. He's making it in an iambic pentameter, but he's also not following a rhyme scheme. And if you look at the rhyme scheme, the first line is like, if you want to map the rhyme scheme, it would become A B B, A A C C, A D E, D D-E-T-E, which would be, there is a rhyme scheme. Definitely there's a rhyme scheme involved, but sometimes it is in alternate lines, sometimes in between subsequent lines. There is no definitive pattern when it comes to the rhyme scheme. But actually, this kind of rhyme scheme is not unusual for Wordsworth, because as a poet, he is not a very strong proponent of strict rules of rhyme and poetic diction. In fact, he was against this idea that poetry should be following a very strict rule, which was the norm for the earlier generation, for a generation of poets which had come and gone much before Wordsworth. And for Wordsworth, he was of the view that poetry is a spontaneous overflow of human emotion. So he is not much in the favor of expressing himself through very strict forms of rhyme verse. Now let's read the poem stanza by stanza. He says, "Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by, a sight so touching in its majesty." The earth is very pretty, and this sight, he says, he says that this is the fairest sight. So he's in a way exaggerating the kind of beauty that he sees around him. And he says that anyone who would be passing across this landscape, dull would he be of the soul, who could pass by, a sight so touching in its majesty. So he's saying that the majesty symbolizes the grandeur of the scene, and whoever would be able to pass from this or pass across this place without being touched by the beauty of this scene would be very dull. Now when you see by and majesty, this is a close, this is not really a perfect rhyme, you would not call it a perfect rhyme, but this you can qualify this as partial rhyme. So it does partially rhyme, by and majesty, by and tea. It does rhyme, but it's a partial rhyme. This city now doth like a garment wear, the beauty of the morning silent bear. Ships, towers, domes, theatres, and temples lie upon, onto the fields, into the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Now he's saying that the city wears a beauty like a garment, which is the beauty of the morning. So the city doth like a garment wear the beauty of its morning. And in the morning, the city is not doing, it is not adorned by so much that you would see maybe in the afternoon or in the evening. There are not many people around, right? So it does not require anything. It's a self-sufficient kind of a beauty. It's self-sufficient in its beauty. It is a subtle, bare beauty. And this is a rare occasion that Wordsworth is actually appreciating the ships, the towers, the domes, the theatres, the temples. This, he is mostly, you would find Wordsworth poems talking about the child, the young child, who he says is the father of man, right? He is mostly appreciating, the bounty of nature, as it were. He's mostly, you would find him appreciating flowers, like his poem Daffodils, right? Or a solitary reaper, a solitary figure working, on his own in the countryside. You would not find him appreciating domes, ships, towers. He doesn't do that, but in this poem he clearly is. Upon into the fields and into the sky, all bright, glittering in the smokeless air. And he finally does notice that this air, for now, for the time being, is devoid of the smokes, which means that, he is aware that mostly the city is polluted. Mostly the city does have smoke in its air. Never did sun more bright, more beautifully steep in the fields, in the first splendor, valley, rock or hill. Never saw I, never felt a calm so deep. So in this vast expanse of the city, the sun shines ever so brightly, and the poet says that he didn't ever feel so calm, so happy, so silent before. The river glideth in its own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. So he's happy about the free will of the river. He knows that the river is, showing its bounty to the city like any other place. And he knows that the houses also seem asleep. But the mighty heart of the country, now here, mighty heart refers to England, the heart of England. He says that it is for the time being, it is still, uh, again, he is personifying the country, he is personifying the country of England, he personifying the empire, and he's saying this mighty heart of the English empire is lying still in this beauty. So finally, he's proud of the beauty of the country, of the empire, of the place that he inhabits. So this was the poem. I hope you understood this poem through my commentary. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much.